my hair then.
Oh my God, yeah. Your hair's a bit wild today. You definitely?
I definitely think I'm having a wild look today. It's just that bit.
Also, if I must adjust because I noticed on one or two of these that I'm down here and you're up there, and I've been listening about posture, and posture makes a big difference. So
I'm intimidating you.
Yeah, yeah, so it does.
Press my breast forward. That intimidates you.
I get too carried away.
Oh dear.
I said no thrusting and stuff like that. Hey, episode 52, Thursday, the 14th of May. Start with, I've got Oscar who's in the garden, so he might bark to be let in. So you might be left on your own for a few seconds at some point.
I won't talk about the weather then, I'll talk about something else.
Yeah. But you've done really, really well, I think, over the last 51 episodes. I never thought you would be able to do this, to be honest. You've done extremely well. So well done. I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Could you just get on with it, Mr. Producer?
I'm trying something. Because I want to just try and do one or two things a little bit differently.
Okay.
So I don't want to get too much into the media and the coronavirus and what's been spouted too much. It's going to be difficult with a bit of feedback from Steve Theory, but we're going to try it. Anyway, I forgot yesterday to say what the music link was. It was obviously Disney because we had Frozen 2 and before that, The Jungle Book. And then yesterday, Barry Royden, pleased to say, popped up with, he had 2 goes of it, but he got it Snow Patrol, linked to Frozen. See what I did there? Pretty obvious, really. But getting a song, he got it Run by Snow Patrol. So well done, Barry. And now we've got today's music, which I think some of the old stalwarts might be able to get. And you've got to get the link to yesterday. So if we're ready, I've got to be a bit careful with this. A few seconds. All right. So
yeah, okay.
All right, here we go. I think that, did you hear that?
Yes.
That was 11 seconds actually. Yeah, I think if I went a bit much further, it might be quite distinctive and a bit of a letdown. Now, photo, I'm back in photo action. So that's why I've been a little bit delayed in my preparation. So requests from Canada coming in, and we've mentioned these people a few times during the video casts, or whatever you want to call them. And that is Sid and Betty. Can you see them?
Yes, my mum and dad, bless them. That's on their wedding day.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, many years ago. 60.
Yeah, we won't get into that. That caused a bit of a family issue, wasn't it? Exactly.
Oh, that was the skeleton in the cupboard, that was. 63 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So mum and dad, yeah, I don't know if I see you particularly in them. Who are you more like, your mum or your dad?
Probably. Oh, I think I'm probably a bit of both, actually. I probably am the one that's got a bit of both of me.
I'll tell you what. Let's have a look. Give viewers a better chance to see what you.
This is my mum and dad now, bless them.
Yeah, yeah. That's your mum's 90th birthday, so she's got the fairy.
Look at my grumpy dad. No, he wasn't grumpy, actually. He was very good.
Yeah. Don't know what that expression is. Yeah, but there you go.
Yeah. Oh, she probably that. I think it's my uncle next to my mum.
I'll cut him out. I chopped him, edited him.
You chopped him, and he was probably listening to him. Bless him.
Yeah, yeah. I better go and let Oscar in. He's barking. I'm just going to check.
Okay, do that then.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to pause it. I'll take the pressure off you.
Sorry, I'm going to get some water because I've got a little tickle.
Yeah, that's okay. I thought we pause it. I'm recording again, just so all okay. Hubert from Canada thinks there's outtakes from this, but no, you're completely natural, aren't you?
Yeah, apart from the makeup.
Yeah. back to feedback then. From Canada, from Hubert himself in Canada. He was talking about they've got some racial issues in the current situation, and people have been advised to, if they're dealing with confrontation, to deal with it by trying to distract the perpetrator, and maybe go a little bit left field in their approach, just to get their brain thinking differently and be distracted, which is a tactic he's suggesting for some other scenarios in life. So
how would you approach someone who's been? It's quite difficult because they're angry in the first place, aren't they?
So
I'm not sure is the answer to that one.
So when you're banging on at me about something or other, I will say something like, "Oh, that's a nice flower out in the garden," or something like that, and just see how
that won't work, because I would just get more cross with you because I feel that you're not paying attention to me.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. So interesting one there from Hubert. Leaning forward, whether it's done just listening to you and just gently, or if it's done aggressively, makes a difference. He thanked everybody for the comedy clips that were put up, but we'll have more of those. I'm trying to, my brain's good 70s, 80s and yesterday, but there's a big gap in between. So, yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Grazia fed back about the importance of listening, not just talking. You remember I was talking about you've got two ears and one mouth, or most people have, and so use them in that proportion. She had an interview once and assumed the question and spoke for 15 minutes about nothing to do with what she was asked about, and didn't get the job, but she was quite pleased about that in the end. And she's been watching Normal Life, coming to the end of it last night, which my brother recommended. I've watched the whole series now.
But the trouble is, there's going to be another series, and so you know that that's not the end. So you watch these programs, and you're landing up in suspense. So you've got to watch the next one. It's a bit
intriguing one though, because it's quite deep in many ways, but lots of raunchy stuff. So maybe that's just why the viewing figures are up. But I'd like to think that.
I think it's a deep and meaningful.
Well, you've not watched it. You haven't got a clue.
I've watched bits of it, and it is about, it is about the emotions as well as, the sex and everything else. That's just a byproduct.
Yeah. I mean, anybody wants a very thoughtful review, then get in touch with my brother Adam, because he's done a very good assessment of it, personal assessment of it. I'm just not quite there with my proper review. Steve Fury, he's noticed, be careful here because could get you going. Garden centres were packed yesterday, he said, and he's also seen London buses and tube videos. Is it madness or isn't it? It was his question, which, as I said to him, is a big question. And allied to that, he goes, what did I think, or we think, of the England athletics statement yesterday? I won't ask you, Dawn, don't worry, because you probably haven't read it, and it doesn't say much anyway, other than...
To be quite honest with you, it's the same as anything else. At some stage, we've got to get back to work. We cannot stay in our houses for 5 or 6 years, etc., and expect everything to be hunky dunky, because it's not. And the practical person in me says that, yes, we've got to get back to work. But I think you've got to be sensible. And I mean, some people feel comfortable with face masks on and other people don't. They find them uncomfortable. So I think it's but the key here is to keep washing your hands. So when you do something, when you travel on the train, as soon as you get to work, you wash your hands, and you keep washing your hands during the day. You don't stop that practice, and it's the only way to kill the virus until we get a vaccine or whatever. But we have to get back to work. We've had 6 weeks of nothing. We know what the economy was doing anyway. And so I think practicalities is, but I do think that, from my point of view, if the bus was crowded, I wouldn't get on it. If I didn't want to get on it, I wouldn't get on it.
Well, you might be waiting a long time then, because there was a, normal, let's take the Underground as an example. I read something yesterday where typically in a carriage, there's 40-something people. If you had 2 meters apart, that would come down to 2. And imagine that's 21 times as many carriages as you would need normally to transport the same number of people. But anyway, let's get away. Let's sort of get away from that, because that's
Yeah.
not what I'm talking about. We talk of Steve raised England athletics, and with a club like ours or his returning at some stage, there's talk of no competition definitely until the end of June, no athletics activity, which means clubs until the end of May. And I don't want to talk just about athletics, because this applies to rugby, football, and all sorts of things.
It applies to sport full stop, doesn't it, really? Let's be honest about it.
We had a bit of a debate this week as a club, and it's a very difficult one. There's a lot going on, and well, do you want to say anything about it first, or shall I?
Well, I mean, my feelings are that for 6 weeks, certainly your group and all the other, the older groups have, they've been set something to do, etc., and had to go out on their own. I don't see anything wrong with that. My opinion would be that if you had, say, like a month's calendar, and say that some groups would be able to meet at the track and others would have to continue in isolation but still report in. When the competition starts, it becomes a little bit more complicated, because then everyone's got to meet up for that competition. And I don't see how that's going to happen for some time, until we feel comfortable with where we're going with the virus, etc. And it is time that will tell. I'm sort of like almost resigned to sort of like file most things until the end, the new season, September time, because then by that time we'll have a little bit more knowledge about it. But also from the football side, they're talking about, even if you have the games behind closed doors, how are you, if someone is going up for the ball together, the social distance isn't there, etc. And I do think that if you're playing sport, social distancing goes out the window. And so it's whether you feel comfortable actually resuming and playing. I mean, most kids today will be absolutely desperate to have a game of football. But I did see a programme in Read Denmark schools, and they've gone back and have been gone back for the last, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks. But they are social distancing in school. So they're segregated into, I think there's 6 of them in a classroom or something like that. And when they go out to play, there's only 4 of them in a section, and they've sectioned the playground off. So they can't play catch, they can't do any of those things, but they can play certain games in that certain area.
Why?
Well, there's 7.
Okay. Yeah.
And they didn't think they'd be able to do it, but they've done it. So in some respects, but I do think maybe the schools are smaller in Denmark. I'm not absolutely certain, but I was just trying to apply that to like primary schools. When you've got like 19, 20 in a class, how are you expecting to segregate them? The playgrounds are small. I mean, you might have fields, etc. You're going to need more people to supervise. So that applies to sport as well, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Don't know where to start. There's a few things here. First of all, I hadn't really appreciated it, but some sports are professional. Some, even local, are semi-professional. Some of the rugby clubs pay players, for example. Coaches are paid in swimming, some in rugby, etc. Which puts a little bit of a different slant on it in some respects. Funny enough, I think athletics at club level is in quite a good position from that point of view. I was asked by a writer for a couple of national papers about how long we thought we could last as a club, and I was a bit perplexed, realised what he was talking about. But of course we can survive a long time, because financially anyway, because nobody's paid, and the whole structure of grassroots athletics is based on loads of volunteers who don't get paid. So for once we're in a strong position. Now you imagine if we developed the club into more of a business, then we'd be facing significant issues. And that was part of thinking when we were discussing a plan. So that's one aspect. Secondly, England Athletics have made this statement about having a plan to go back to competition and bringing that into force. And they're thinking, oh, okay, end of June, into July, we can start, doing some competition. They've done it, I believe, and from one of my sources, without consulting the officials body, which you're part of.
No, they have consulted us. They've asked us if we, and I told you this.
Oh yeah,
I've had a survey to say would I be prepared to go, but
there's no concrete plan, so you couldn't.
No, but I mean, in theory, I am prepared to go back. But I mean, I want to know more.
Surely,
pardon?
the vast majority wouldn't, surely.
Well, it depends on what age group you are, I suppose. But I feel, you see, my job, I don't actually sort of like, when I'm on the track, I'm in the open air, I don't see a massive problem with that. If a athlete said, was standing next to me and coughing and spluttering, etc., then I wouldn't be very amused. I totally agree with you. But then surely they wouldn't be allowed to come and do competition, not at that stage.
Well, no. There's, for those that don't know, it's a weird setup, athletics. You've got UK Athletics on the one hand, which looks after the elite side of the sport, if you like, and puts on events such as the Anniversary Games, which is now cancelled, which is a large hole in the income stream for UK Athletics, about £1 million. I think they get, was it 2.5 million or something like that from the BBC a year? So that and in ticket sales, so that's lost. So that affects it. And in talking to somebody yesterday, of course, what's going to happen with the lottery funding, which goes through and filters through to sport, because that might be directed to other what are seen as more deserving causes in the future. So will that have effect on sport?
Well, it depends on how many people continue to play the lottery, let's be honest about it, because the lottery fund is only as big as people who are playing the games, etc., or are doing it, aren't they? Winners come out of it. It's a small percentage. I mean, the lottery did say that they were going to put 300 million to other causes, but they haven't said, and I think this is down to the lottery, that they're going to stop funding, the sports that they do. There are lots of fundamental, and I think the lottery realise that there are things that they can do to help, the whole establishments, and I'd be intrigued to find out where their stance is re athletics.
Yeah. And there's a couple of other things. As far as UK Athletics is concerned, somebody I know wrote to them about this, almost a frightening prospect of returning too early, when coaches and administrators at clubs, their main priority is the health and safety of their members, whether it be athletes, coaches, officials or whatever, and said, how can you even think about this? And that promoted a dialogue where it became pretty obvious that although it was really good that somebody in grassroots athletics got a phone call from somebody quite high up in world and UK athletics, they didn't have any idea of the complexities that went on at ground level and what would be involved. We might get 300 people at a club night if we just returned as per normal, which would be like a small football attendance. And so how do you control that? And I'm worried that whenever an announcement's made, it'll be pretty short notice to put these things together. And very difficult for your opinion will be different from mine, and what you're prepared to do will be different from somebody else's.
Oh, God,
as you said, the health aspects, people with underlying issues. We've got coaches with wives who have underlying issues. We've got coaches themselves with significant health issues if they're exposed to this virus. We've got officials of a certain age. You've got to have a plan, a very detailed plan in place. And some people's attitude will be different from others. They will jump the gun and want to get back. Others will be a little bit more reticent. That's very difficult when you've got a club of significant size to organise.
I totally agree, and therefore, it's up to the committee then to have some sort of plan to go forward and enforce it. These are the days that this group can train. These are the days that this group can train, and you've got to decide how many groups there are, etc.
Right.
And there are people in those, there are athletes in there that won't come down because of the fear that they have. And then you've got, of course, the very fact that the facilities are used now. The car park is a testing centre, so logistically, it's going to be very difficult. Now, long term, I don't think the distance groups are going to have too much trouble because you're able to exercise outside. It will be like a sprint group, etc. But from my point of view, I can't, at the moment we're only allowed to meet one other. So if you want to do a one-to-one session down the park, for instance, if it wasn't too crowded and you've taken into consideration everything, there's no reason why you can't meet up, keep your distance, and you have to have dialogue. There will be ways to do it. The dialogue has to be there to begin with. This is the session that we're going to set. I'll come and supervise and help and encourage, but I've got to keep 2 meters away from you. So that in a sense, you're trying to work with what you've got. Now, sprinters and hurdlers, it's very important to get feedback at that, at the stage of you're going over the hurdle, etc. And you can't do it yourself if you're going over the hurdle. You need someone standing at the side to be able to do it. So at the end of the day, I think there are certain things that you could do.
Right. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but on that, I don't think a club committee in any sport can just make decisions and then dictate to everybody what's going to happen. Now, that leads on to a concept which I've stumbled across in talking to somebody yesterday, a friend of mine, and it's something that is an involvement from what I was trying to get across to some of our members of committee this week, was that we should start engaging with all the coaches and maybe others, just to see how they're feeling, what their view of the situation is, what their view of the situation going forward is, what they might be prepared to do, not prepared to do. Are they, thinking hard? Have they been reflecting on their involvement in the sport? We just don't know. And so it would be better to start gathering those sorts of thoughts early than leave it until any announcements are made, just so that we're forearmed. And that led on to something that was crystallized for me by somebody explaining the concept of what's called an unhurried meeting. Okay. And that is a meeting of people with no agenda. There's no agenda. You just sit and you chat. And from that, thoughts grow, trust in each other grows, confidence in each other grows, and people will divulge things which are perhaps honest views rather than being put under pressure. Will you come back on September the 1st to coach and do it in this way?
I think you're right. I think yes, you do need to have an honest conversation with people. I mean, I personally, because of my group, etc., wouldn't be coming back anywhere near as early as everybody else, because there isn't any need for me, because in a sense I coach a group of children who can't compete, and therefore I feel quite comfortable in saying no, do whatever you need to do. I've had some dialogue with some of my group.
But then Dawn, what's going to happen is if you have some going back and others not, people are going, well, I've paid my subs, when am I going to get my money's worth?
I realise this, and then therefore I've got to sort of like think, how many people can I have? Does it mean that I have to come down 4 nights a week, which just wouldn't be, we can't go anywhere apart from the fields or anything else. It is easier on the field because you've got less, but we all meet up in the same place, and maybe that is the thing that we need to change. I haven't really sort of like thought about it in any great detail.
No, and that's why I'd like.
I think in some respects that you're right. You've got to start with an open discussion with everybody telling people how they feel about it and go from there, really.
Yeah. Whatever the governing bodies say to you, make sure you've got your, what do they call them? Something in line? Ducks in line or something like that?
Well, I personally think because every establishment is different, and this is the problem. You
Yeah.
can't put a blanket instruction out. You have to take into consideration your needs and your circumstances.
Right, we better go. We've rattled on today. It's a bit dry. We'll blame Steve Fury for that, but he's been terrific. He has been so good with his feedback, his music guesses, everything else. I'm full of positivity with him. He's led us down a bit of a garden path this morning, but it's made us think, and that's the real positive. And
it's that old cliche, work together, isn't it? And I do think it's going to be that.
okay then.
Bye.
Bye.